it's also because, we came in discovering, the same exact story that, artists from the African continent have experienced all their life in Brazil. Like the largest population of Black people is in Brazil, after Africa. They probably have some of the largest number of artists that are from Afro descent.
Yeah.
But they have been ignored all this time, and now, having few galleries that are the major galleries, allowing them to enter the market. And there's always gatekeepers, everywhere. They are international in every country. And I think the idea of having also this large population that is actually so linked to Africa, it's unbelievable. That was my first discovery, is like going to Brazil for the first time and seeing this. First of all, I'm not saying that because you're Nigerian, but direct link with Nigeria.
Yeah, there's I think, I can't remember what it is, but the comments will let me know. There's a celebration that they have, and there's a lot of Yoruba traditions in there. I took my mum and dad to a Brazilian restaurant, and they were looking at the food. They were like, that's that. So it's heavily linked there. And our surname, one of my surnames, Sanusi. There's a bunch of Sanusis in Brazil. So the links are incredible.
Are so strong. And I have to say, not that I ignored them. I knew they were there because of the histories of that we know about. But to see it so present and so well preserved was a real eye-opener, because, we met artists, went to studios, where we even had the chance to have, rituals, Yoruba rituals, of what they call Brazilian artists, but that were from the Afro descent. So for us, we are extremely excited about bringing these experiences, to New York. And we've been experiencing with, having different selected projects on Caribbean, over at least 3 or 4 years. So this is like a very integrated part of New York, but the section curated by a curator from African descent, to this section, to the New York audience, is very important to us. And I feel like this is one of our, our highlight. The market in New York is very special right now because it is also experiencing quite a slow cycle. So we are very excited also to share for the first time, I don't know if it's a good thing or a bad thing, but, in New York, one of our major challenge over the years is the real estate. And apparently it's a very common thing in New York, but we've been changing venues compared to Somerset House that we have as a spiritual home, and La Mamunia in Marrakesh that we had for now 7 years. In New York, we've been like nomads. We've experienced every neighborhood, from Harlem to the financial district, from Brooklyn. I think we covered most of the boroughs. Maybe Queens we didn't do, but maybe it's in the future. So we are back in Chelsea, which we experienced before, which is great. But we're sharing also a building with an art fair that is quite, established, called Nada. That is also very, very much into, experiencing and supporting, the emerging galleries and emerging artists. So this is for us, I think, a very new, exciting addition, because I think we're going to be able to, share audiences. And I think the more visibility we get, the better. And then, we have amazing galleries that never done 154 before, that is always cool to bring, to the table. We have a gallery from London called Blonde Contemporary that is doing the fair and trusting us with their first show with us in New York, and they're bringing different South African artists that we never had on the table. They're also bringing a super cool Moroccan artist, that, funny enough, grew up in the US. She's Moroccan, but her talent is crazy because she is completely influenced by a very special school, of this little tiny village in Morocco. And I don't know how, this, I know she's Moroccan, but I don't think she hang out with those side of artists. She's based in Brooklyn. But I was so impressed by seeing her very cool work that is honestly remind everyone, that knows the different Moroccan school, about this school of Essaouira, which is a very naive school that, that does things a bit like the Australian art with little dots, you know. So that's very exciting for me. But like, I mean, most of the fair, you know, the VIP program, you know, we have amazing studios, artist opening. It is very cool to be in New York, you know, with this visibility when you have, you know, all the big fairs in town. You know, it's a particular week. It's the week of Freeze, but also of TIFAF. You have NADA happening in the same building where you have us. You have another another art fair called The Independent that is a super cool art fair. But then you have all the big sales from the auction. So, you know, it's important for us to be
in that energy,
in that moment, you know, for the artists, for the visibility, for everything. And then, you know, as soon as this finish, we go back with our hat for London. You know, it's a bit of our life, like going around. But in the meantime, you know, there's the Biennale of Venice that is happening even before us. And this is year, it's a very important year, you know, like it's, I'm very proud to say it because this is part of our early journey on, you know, Koyo Kouoh, who passed away, who's the director of this Biennale. Unfortunately, she won't be there physically, you know, to be there with us. But, you know, the Biennale of Venice is like the biggest accolade that any artist from Africa can have, to be chosen in that roster. You know, when you told me, you know, what would make a difference in an artist's life, to be chosen for a Biennale of Venice is like you arrived, you achieved, you played the rules until the end, you know, and you have this, you know, kind of like badge of honor. You've done the Biennale of Venice. And even for a creator, it's a bit of the same thing. If you're able to have reached, you know, to be chosen ever to become the director of the Biennale of Venice, is like you also achieved the biggest accolade, you know, as a creator. What is beautiful for me is Koyo started with me 154, and she was one of the first creator that created the educational program of 154 that we call the 154 Forum. She worked with us for 6 years. You know, a lot of those artists, and there's a few of them, you know, in this Biennale that she had listed before she passed away, came from 154, you know. So those are artists that, you know, have started all their journeys with 154. So for me also, this is, you know, not only a beautiful part because it's before New York, sorry, I'm jumping, but like this is also for me a big moment, because we have this, I want to say, recognition of a large number of artists and where they are today that have been chosen, you know, to be part of this big show. And then you have all the international, you know, and African pavilion that also representing a lot of artists that have been at 154, you know. So for me, it's a bit of like a check. We've done a good job, you know, in bringing them, in making those connections happen, you know, that are happening. So I think New York will be a bit of a celebration of that, you know, because it will be very fresh, you know, in everybody's mind, you know, on how exciting, you know, maybe Africa has become, you know, to have a curator who was from the continent, you know, that is creating the Biennale of Venice. But also, I think it's one of the largest representation of African and African diasporan artists of any Biennale of the world, you know, that we will experience in a week time, you know. So it is very exciting to be part of it and to, you know, continue to celebrate it with 154 New York in New York.
Yeah, no, that's amazing. It's super inspiring. I'm going to leave with one final question. What does success in the art world look like for you today?
I mean, for me, it's definitely, you know, having you know, this automatic, you know, integration of even our galleries to be automatically chosen, you know, in larger art fair, to have artists automatically chosen, you know, to be part of a, you know, more global exhibition, not a very focused African type, you know, exhibitions, or to have enough scholars, you know, to be ready to archive and talk and do publications, you know, on those artists. To make our role obsolete really, like where you don't need 154, you know, that everything is done so well that we don't have to worry about all those things. And of course, have enough collectors locally, you know, and infrastructure locally that will, you know, change the game of, you know, those artists for the long term, you know, not just, you know, the time of a fair.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Touria. Really appreciate
You're welcome, Ade. Thank you for having me.
No worries. All good. Thank you.